Background of the HFA Innovation Challenge. It's part of the efforts put forth by the Healthcare Fintech Alliance, or the HFA, which is comprised of the Fintech Academy, Pfizer, and Alibaba Cloud, to tackle issues surrounding healthcare with innovative and tangible solutions. Today, we'll be going through a briefing of the HFA Innovation Challenge, which will encompass an introduction to the challenge itself, a quick background on the healthcare industry, and its challenges in ASEAN as a whole. And then to give some of the tangible use cases of the innovations we're looking for, our guest speaker will also give her insights and cite some current active use cases. Finally, we'll have some Q&A to delve into additional concerns and inquiries you may have as participants in this challenge. Now, without further ado, please welcome Valerie Shelley, who is from Access Health. She is a project manager at Access Health International Southeast Asia. She's a trained registered pediatric and community health nurse and has worked across inpatient, outpatient, and urban healthcare centers in the US and India over the last 10 years. Valerie has worked in the public health research and consultancy for the last 3 years in areas of neurodevelopment conditions, infectious disease, and health systems innovations and reform. So let's pass it on to Valerie. Valerie, if you'd go ahead and put on your slides.
Thanks so much. Really appreciate being here. Thank you, Lillian, for the invitation, and I'm really happy to be here alongside our acquaintances and good friends, Silver at Pfizer, and just be able to be a part of all of this and to really show how all of our interests are aligned and just how important we all think that this issue can be. So let me put this in presentation mode here. Essentially, what we're going to be doing, what I'd like to lay out for everybody today, and thank you for everybody for being here, but I want to frame the healthcare affordability and accessibility challenges, mostly so that we can all see just the avenues for fintech as far as coming in and addressing these challenges, but before doing that, to fully be able to understand from the patient's point of view, as well as the challenges that they experience, through gaps in social health insurance and the external pain points that they go through in their lives. So looks like it's running through here. So Access Health International, if you're not familiar with us, we are a nonprofit organization. I am program manager at Access Health International. Thank you for that background. Here in the Southeast Asia office, we have multiple offices in Asia as well, but here in the Southeast Asia office, we run various programs based on delivering high quality, affordable, accessible healthcare to everyone despite their age, their socioeconomic status. And so we stick to that vision in everything that we do. So one of the areas of expertise that we have within our office, as well as within the entire organization, is digital health as well as innovative financing. So we've created a sort of knowledge base in this area to try to tie the two issues of healthcare affordability and digital health and fintech together, so that we can kind of create that bridge, that translation, to be able to start those talks and to see how one can come in as a solution for the other, and how healthcare can also relay the problems in a certain way so that they're well understood to other sectors. Access Health has made a significant impact in the health and aging industries by fostering healthcare innovations through unique partnerships among entrepreneurs, policymakers, corporations, startups, investors. We also have good ties with regional governments as well as non-governmental organizations. So as you can see, we partner across across sectors. So notably, for this conversation, Access Health has been working at the intersection of healthcare financing, digital health, and fintech approaches to solve the fundamental problems related to healthcare access. And one of those, three of those that I've already mentioned, one of them is access, but also affordability and high quality. It's important to remember throughout this talk that access is one challenge that we experience in healthcare, but true access comes when the patients can actually have access to high quality care, as well as affordable care. It's not a box that we tick that says, well, they have, they can go down to this hospital here. I don't see what the problem is. What we do is we look at what is the level of accessibility, the level of quality, and the level of affordability of that healthcare. And we talk about the ways that we can make that access to healthcare much easier, much less of a hard decision for that patient to make as far as what do they pay for, and then also looking at honoring their wishes to have high quality care, just like you and I do, no matter where we are in the world. So let's first let's lay the foundation for healthcare costs as a main driver for poverty. When we think about, many of you are probably in Singapore, this talk could be focused regionally as well, but in Singapore, we don't worry so much about our healthcare. There are various populations in Singapore that do have problems accessing healthcare, but generally we don't think of accessing healthcare as being a point of potential thrust into devastation or poverty. But when we look regionally, especially in Asia, where high out-of-pocket costs are, the rates are quite high, we look and we ask the question, is this person, if they pay for something for their healthcare, are they being thrown into poverty? And what are the rates of that is happening in the region? So the World Bank and the World Health Organization estimate that globally 925 million people spend more than 10% of their household income on healthcare. And that 10% is quite important because that's the threshold after which household healthcare spending is deemed catastrophic. So we want to look at if we assume a certain rate of out-of-pocket payments for healthcare, at what point does that become devastating for that person? Financing challenges remain the biggest barrier to both universal and individual access to healthcare. So we have to ask the question, if they're paying this much out of pocket, what is that financing challenge? What is that affordability challenge that is causing them, that is leading them to have to pay from their own pocket for their healthcare, either for the healthcare that they really want, or for healthcare that they need for perhaps a life-saving treatment. So you're not just asking whether or not I need this TV, you're asking whether or not I need this service in order to live or die. And that's one of the key considerations for healthcare costs all around the world, is that it can very often be dependent on life or death. So one of the areas that we're going to be focusing on in this talk is high out-of-pocket payments, because I think it'll be much easier for everybody to make the connection between that financing challenge and the fintech mechanism that can come in as a solution to these healthcare affordability challenges. So one thing that we want to talk about for out-of-pocket spending is that catastrophic event. So when we say catastrophic, we think a flood that damaged a house, or we think of a hurricane. We think of that large chunk of cash that has potentially tossed that person or oneself into a financial situation that is very, very hard to get out of, and at times impossible. At times it leaves them in a lower financial category than they first went into this as. So that's why we look at out-of-pocket spending, and that's why we look at catastrophic health events, and particularly in the poor communities where there are less developed markets, and people have to make that difficult decision between healthcare and other needed expenses of daily living. And so they often forego that treatment, whether it's something like cancer, or perhaps it's something that will lead to a more major disease, but they put it off because they don't have the money in the moment to pay for it. So we specifically look at these out-of-pocket payments and how they affect the poor and moderate income. And so we'll talk a bit more about out-of-pocket payments in a little bit as well. For now, I want to keep going on why this is such a huge deal in the patient's life to potentially be thrown into devastation by healthcare costs, by catastrophic healthcare costs. So if we look at this illustration of the health poverty trap, this is a principle that I think is quite helpful to understand in a lot of different areas of life, but especially for healthcare, because we can see the direct connection between poor health and poor productivity. So whether we're looking at a citizen's contribution to society, or a father's ability to take care of his family, we look and we say, what is that cause that is keeping them in this cycle of poverty? So we've got two interlocking loops here. We have a low-income patient. Their ability to save for healthcare and for other things is quite low, which means that they have low investment in their health. They have low future intentions of taking care of their health, and most importantly, preventing something happening in the first place. And then we've got which leads to low economic growth and back around to low income. Low income is the result of low level of education and healthcare, results in low level of human capital and low productivity. So we can see the cycle that poor health can set a person who is low and moderate income into, and how very difficult it can be to get out of that cycle. So when we look at health, we can see that it's not just a discrimination, it's not just an economic output. It's actually can be not just categorized, but it can be quantified as a level of productivity for the society, for that family, for that community. So we can see the broader implications of poor health in a society. Another point I wanted to make is that if we look at our current situation with COVID, and we can see that a lot of the work is being done by the lower income groups, and this is a case in many different countries, a case in the U.S., Singapore, developing countries, undeveloped countries, lower developed countries, where the lower income groups are the ones that do a lot of the work to keep society running. So we can actually see almost firsthand how when people are in poor health, that they produce low productivity, and society does not run the way that it normally does. So while there are other considerations for that setup, other things that we could consider, other things that we could talk about, we have to see that that if they're in poor health, as well as an increased risk of getting sick or hurt, that they will less likely be able to be in society working and being productive and providing for their families. So let's focus a little bit on Asia and what it looks like, what high out-of-pocket payments look like in Asia, and what the span of universal healthcare or social insurance looks like in Asia, and where those gaps lie that are important to know how and why fintech can come in as a solution. So the proportion of all new cases of poverty in Southeast Asia that are due to healthcare costs are 1 to 3. So they're quite high. 65 million people who live in the WHO Southeast Asia region that are in extreme poverty due to healthcare costs. So essentially, this means this is the number of people that have some type of income, but because of their unstable financial situation, any sort of health event has thrown them into poverty, simply based on those catastrophic healthcare costs that were not covered through social health insurance or through any other intervention. 75% of people with cancer in Asia who face death or financial catastrophe within 1 year of diagnosis. That's a very high number. When we look at cancer, it's a good example in a lot of these situations because it's quite often triggered by a lot of the health financing challenges that we'll be talking about in a couple of minutes. It's sudden, it's high upfront cost, and it could quite often be a long-term healthcare cost for that patient. So we look to cancer to see exactly what actually cancer is a very good example of a catastrophic health event that can throw somebody into poverty. So we'll talk a little bit more about health financing challenges in a little bit. And finally, 52% of the total health expenditures that are paid for out of pocket in developing countries. And the OECD average for out-of-pocket payments is about 13.8%. So 52% is quite high. In the next slide, we'll look at the breakdown of a couple different countries where out-of-pocket payments are much higher than the OECD average. So I want to lay out 3 points real quick that we'll go over in the next couple slides. We already talked about high out-of-pocket payments, but for the purpose of this seminar and the purpose of the challenge, we want to know where those high out-of-pocket, or why there are high out-of-pocket payments. You can ask the question, why isn't it covered under social health insurance? So what we can do is we can map that and we can see where those gaps in social health insurance lie in various countries in this region. Number 2, where do these out-of-pocket payments occur across the patient journey? So we actually want to start focusing on the patient. We want to understand where their payment points are along their patient journey. But first, we need to understand where they make the payments, and second, we need to understand where the pain points are along that patient journey. Where is their care being covered? Where is their care not being covered? Where is it being partially covered? Where is their situation leaving them outside the population that social health insurance tends to target? So we'll look at that a little bit. And then finally, we're going to look at a few of the persistent health financing challenges that are experienced by patients. Like I mentioned, there are a few that have some commonalities that we can look at and discuss. So these 6 markets are ones that Access Health has focused on for one of our projects that I'll go through in a little bit. But what we want to do here is look at specifically at their ability to implement universal health coverage, as well as the concurrent rate of high out-of-pocket payments. And these 2 factors together let us know exactly what the challenges will be moving forward in talking about fintech coming in as a solution. So let's address the first point that I brought up. Why are there high out-of-pocket payments? Are there gaps in the social health insurance where these people are not being, where these low and moderate income people are not being addressed? So Bangladesh, we've got, first let me go over the index real quick, the Universal Health Coverage Index. It's a measure of the country's attainment of universal health coverage, and it's defined by the score here 0 to above 80. So the average, the OECD average, as I said, for out-of-pocket payments is 13%, and the UHC index is 80. So the way these countries line up here, we've got Bangladesh at 46, and their out-of-pocket payments are one of the highest, or are the highest out of the markets that we're looking at here. Very, very high rates of out-of-pocket payments, very low rates of insurance coverage or any sort of interventions that help that person pay for their health care. So they have to rely on out-of-pocket payments to pay for not just high-quality healthcare, but any healthcare. India, their UHC index runs at 56%. Their out-of-pocket payments are also quite high. Nepal has a rate of 55% out-of-pocket payments with the index at 46. China has a higher UHC index. They've done some reforms in their social health insurance, but their out-of-pocket payment rate is still quite high. So we want to look and see how, where the pain points lie there. In Malaysia, their UHC index is also fairly high, but their out-of-pocket payments are also range in the 38%, which is almost triple the average. And then Vietnam, the index is 73 and the out-of-pocket payments are at 45%. So while these countries in Asia have varying capacity and funding for universal health coverage, the details of their social insurance programs are different. And patients tend in all of these markets to share common, accessibility and affordability challenges. So when we want to look at these common challenges, we can see that they're paying too much for healthcare and they're not receiving adequate social protection for their catastrophic healthcare costs. So what we want to ask at this point is, why are there high out-of-pocket payments? And where are those healthcare financing needs? And we can see that there are gaps where the government, as well as other interventions, are not targeting their needs in a way that they would like. So this as an overview of the gaps in social health insurance. You could be asking yourself, is the problem to change the social health insurance? But what we want to do is we say, how does fintech come in to help these patients who are banked or not banked, and can bridge that gap in that social health insurance, so that patient can pay for perhaps the cancer care or whatever healthcare costs they need in that moment in a way that they want to access it and receive it. So the next point is we want to look at where in the patient's journey that these out-of-pocket payments lie. This is an important slide in that it shows just how the financial journey lines up with the patient journey. There are quite a few areas where social insurance around the world does not cover healthcare adequately. And one of those areas, of course, is health promotion and prevention. So if we start at birth, we look at, we can go all the way back to mommy, right? Mommy gives birth, prenatal and postnatal care, education, hospital fees and vaccines are all costs around the point of birth. And in various markets, some of these are covered well and some of these are not. In various markets, some are covered, but at a quality that is not quite acceptable. So for example, there could be a woman in Bangladesh that is not receiving the required 4 prenatal visits during her pregnancy that is recommended by the World Health Organization. And on top of that, she's paying for other costs in order to get to the accessible healthcare, or the healthcare that is available to her, not necessarily quality healthcare that is available to her. Prevention and wellness. Around the world, prevention and wellness sees a very poor rate of coverage or reimbursement. Exercise, nutrition, vaccines are often usually covered pretty well, but under a fee schedule, and education as well. So if you want to revert back and think about the health poverty trap, how are we ever going to get out of that cycle if we're not preventing something happening in the first place? So not only is it beneficial for the patient journey and for productivity, it's also beneficial to, it's also cost effective for governments and communities to be paying for prevention activities. So we look at this as a pretty high pain point. Screening and early detection has is little to no funding for screening, lab tests, advanced diagnostics. Annual screenings in many countries are unheard of. The term well checks are not familiar in a lot of different areas. We look at primary care as a point in a large in a person's life from essentially from birth until they hit a level of tertiary care that they'll need when they're older. Primary care is not very well covered, even though it's shown to be an extremely important part in implementing universal health coverage in any market in the world. So primary care includes community health worker integration, access to health care. It can be low quality, you could be receiving low quality care, and it certainly includes chronic disease management, which is where your secondary care often comes in. And if this isn't covered or addressed, it tosses you into tertiary care, which you will stay in until death. So tertiary care includes medical device use, inpatient fees, waiting times, as well as very high cost of treatment. So this is another payment point in the patient journey. Again, actually, you can kind of look at this as an increasing scale of higher and higher payments. If you think about going in for an MRI, the cost of that is quite high. If you think about going in for steroid injections, the cost of that is quite high. So these secondary, tertiary care are quite high and not covered fully in a lot of different areas. So then we look at post-acute care. We look at the surrounding issues such as caregiver stress, the stress on the family of taking care of that person, the cost of rehabilitation, which even in the U.S. is covered very minimally, even under the social health program for 65 and older, which is called Medicare. So the parameters that are tight, and the availability of rehab treatments is also extremely low. And then we look at end of life care, which is another point of high cost. And by that time, we're asking, has that person been able to save in their lifetime in order to pay the high out-of-pocket payments if it's not covered under any other invention? And quite often, especially for low and middle income, that savings just was not able to happen. So then we ask ourselves, what can we offer them? What kind of interventions, what kind of Band-Aids can we offer them that can come in as a fintech solution? So I'm running short on time here. I want to take 2 more minutes and just briefly summarize a little bit of what I was saying, but also kind of connect it to these common financing challenges. And these are quite important to remember moving forward. So healthcare, common financing challenge number 1, healthcare is expensive. It's quite a statement. In general, healthcare costs are not tied to these typical market principles of high demand, high cost, because we don't put a price on a healthcare treatment, because if we need it to live, we have to pay for it, and it skews it skews the market value of that cost, and offers it's an incentive to keep the healthcare costs high, and it's quite hard to work with that type of situation with healthcare costs. Number two, healthcare costs much of healthcare costs are out of pocket, which we've discussed many features of. Number three, healthcare has high transaction costs. This is interesting because there are a lot of other things, and not just the actual cost of the healthcare, but the cost of transportation to get there and back, the cost of the child care for somebody to watch your child as you receive that healthcare treatment, the missed day of work or multiple days of work. So we look at these also as very major healthcare financing challenges that we want to consider when we think about solutions. Healthcare costs are unpredictable. For example, cancer and healthcare costs are not often linked to health outcomes. So these are some pretty common health financing challenges that we at Access Health are happy to have this community, this HFA community and Pfizer, as well as everybody here, to talk about how they can be addressed by fintech solutions. So our program, Fintech for Health, looks at all of these, collates all of these principles into one, and works with various partners to make the connections to see what fintech can do for health. So this diagram here shows you that financial inclusion, universal health coverage can be linked by this Fintech for Health concept. So financial inclusion is where individuals and businesses have access to useful and affordable financial products and services that meet their needs and that are delivered in a responsible and sustainable way. Universal health coverage is defined as ensuring that all people have access to needed health services, prevention, promotion, treatment, everything along that patient journey of sufficient quality to be effective, while also ensuring that the use of these services do not expose the user to financial hardship. So then Fintech for Health, which ties it together, it applies the approaches and technologies of financial inclusion towards the goals of universal health coverage, resulting in increased access and affordability of high quality care for everyone. So these are the principles, these are the potential solutions, and these are what we think about when we start brainstorming as to what fintech can do for health. Me and my team are happy to talk a bit more about Fintech for Health and our experiences so far and what we expect moving forward. And then later on in the talk, I will also go through a couple of use cases that'll give you a little bit more of an idea of how fintech can fit into health. So thank you very much.
Subrat, are you talking? Because it seems like we can't hear you.
Speaker will be Silver Chen. He is currently the Regional Health and Value Lead for Emerging Asia at Pfizer. He has been the Senior Director for Regional Patient and Health Impact Lead at Emerging Markets in Asia since 2013, based in Hong Kong. He is a member of the Pfizer Regional Leadership Team and responsible for providing strategic and execution support for in-country market access operations within the Asia region. Silver has over 20 years of pharmaceutical experience in market access, public affairs, and laboratory science. The second speaker is Chester Zhang. She is the Regional Therapeutics Lead for Inflammation and Immunology in the Emerging Markets Asia at Pfizer. She has worked at Pfizer for more than 20 years, held several positions across the company, including as Regional Marketing Director and her current position as the Regional Lead for the I&I category. She was involved in the marketing of major innovative medicine launched by the company in Asia, including an antibiotic, an anticoagulant, and a Janus kinase inhibitor. So I'll pass it on to both Silver and Chester to take it away. Thank you.
Hi. So thank you so much, Shue, for the kind introduction. Hello, everyone. Good afternoon. So in the next couple of minutes, I'd like to share with you a little bit of the insight of what the specific challenge we are putting in front so that you can address the right question. And thanks to Valerie, who has given a great general background introduction of all the healthcare challenges and financial challenges along the care pathway, or even the whole person's life. I think it's a very good background. For the next segment, we will be zooming right into the access to medicines financial challenge, which is a subset of the overall challenge that Valerie was describing earlier. So if you walk into the shoes of a patient, here a typical patient journey in emerging Asia, you go visit a doctor, and the doctor would prescribe innovative medicine, let's call it A, to you, and it's costing you X dollars per day. So in many cases in Asia, well, the patient just found out that I can't afford that innovative new medicine. So what happens then is that they would be either go untreated, or they choose to be treated with a less effective, typically an older, cheaper drug B. But the outcome of that is then, as a consequence of that, patient has suboptimal health outcomes. They don't get to the ideal health state that they could have achieved with drug A. So that's overall the challenge we are trying to solve. So for the challenge, essentially the challenge, if I describe simply, is how can we increase patient affordability to our innovative high-value medicines using technology. So that's essentially what we're trying to get at. And for that, I'd like to describe in two separate challenges, which we'll go into a little bit more detail in the next couple of minutes. So think about this scenario, right? The patient cannot afford that ideal drug A. There are two ways, broad ways we can solve that challenge. Challenge number one would be somehow you find innovative financing solutions so that they will be able to come up with that X dollars per day, right? So that's one solution we could potentially approach. The second challenge would be making the current patient assistance programs, PSPs, which we'll talk a little bit more. These programs are supported currently by pharmaceutical companies like Pfizer. Make those programs more effective and leverage those specific funding so that more patients can benefit it, or the experience of getting that assistance a lot easier and more effective. So those are the two ways. One is finding the new pot of money. Two is making the pot of money that's already there more effective and easier to access. So that's kind of broadly the two challenges we're going to lay out. I will go onto a little bit more detail about the first challenge, which is finding the financial resources so that you can expand access and affordability to medicines. So a lot of the background has been covered by Valerie. So here in Asia, emerging Asia, millions of people still cannot meet their healthcare needs because the public government programs are very under-resourced, as indicated by the UHC index that Valerie shared. And there are vast economic inequities in our markets because of lack of transfer payments. Particularly access to innovative medicine is a critical challenge. I would argue perhaps this is the most effective health intervention for patients' health. It's very cost effective and it's relative to surgery and all the other major interventions. This is a little easier to integrate with patients' life as well. So, and as also previously mentioned, many patients are underbanked or they are unbanked. So they don't have the insurance coverage, the savings, or even the simple income proof to get a loan. For example, they need you to prove you have income. There are a lot of times people are having cash transactions, or they have underemployment, they don't have a regular job. So it's very difficult for them to get the regular financial services from the traditional banks or insurance companies. So, but the good news is, many of you know in the audience that the increasing use of mobile technology and the internet will now not only allow more people to access healthcare information, but also generate digital data for which innovative financing solutions could be based upon. For us, an innovative financing mechanism is essential to bring resources needed to build a sustainable solution that empower patients to access innovative medicines. So our expected patient impact for the solution would be to improve patient affordability and ensure use of the right medicines. So in the example before, if the doctor thinks you are best suitable for drug A, we should make sure you get drug A, not drug B, which is a suboptimal drug, right? And enhance adherence to therapy. If you have more financial resources, you will be able to stick around for the adherence for the right therapy for longer, so that you can ultimately get the patient health outcomes, which is what we really wanted to do. So a couple of, I just want to highlight a couple of issues in a few markets here. Most of these markets, as Valerie has indicated, they either have poor coverage in the universal health coverage, or they don't have universal coverage at all. So many of these markets people have high out-of-pocket cost for health in general, and particularly it's more pronounced actually in medicines. They have a high out-of-pocket burden for paying for their innovative medicines. So for example, in Indonesia, if you want to implement affordability solutions, a proper mechanism is needed to properly identify patients' affordability, which is the idea to find reliable means testing. So means testing meaning, in other words, income testing. Or the asset they have, right? So to validate. So people can use digital data to generate some kind of scoring on their affordability level, but we need somehow be able to validate such output through those tools. So that could be a big challenge in the fintech world that we hope that someone are able to solve with some credible validation of the methodology, right? And in India, affordability is a key barrier for patients to take innovative medicines, as in many other countries here. Again, measurement of affordability, their paying power is something that's really needed. Philippines as similarly. So how can we help them, access available funding, as well as help them have expand their period of time that they can pay off the medicines, whether it's a loan or some other financial instrument, so that they are provided a tool they can pay off the medicine over a longer period of time. In Vietnam, the alternative funding source and microfinancing solutions are currently extremely limited. So many people are still relying on the public government coverage, which is very thin coverage. Normally, they only cover very basic and cheap and old medicines, if you will. And the new innovative medicines, such as cancer therapy or immunotherapy, they're normally not part of the universal health care. So, so effectively, patients need to pay out of pocket. So overall, to sum it up, the challenge in this particular one, the challenge number one is, how can we use fintech solutions of financial technology to help patients either raise funds or provide some kind of loan or infrastructure such that they can become more affordable to the medicines that could either save their lives or dramatically improve their quality of life so that they become a productive citizen again, and they can be contributing to society much more than they otherwise would be under such a disease. So that is the first description of the first challenge. Now I'm going to pass on to my colleague Chester to cover the second challenge.
Thank you very much, Silver. Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you once again for your interest in this webinar. And I also want to thank the invitation by FTA and Dr. Ko to me to be part of this panel. And I'm very excited and pleased to have this opportunity to discuss this topic with all of you, because it's so important and is really our mandate to bring in innovative solutions to help the patient out there who are looking for innovative treatment for their diseases. And I hope you now have a better understanding on the access challenge to medicine facing us in this region after you heard from Valerie and Silver. Just like what my colleague Silver just mentioned, our patient support program is one of the opportunities that could help patients increase their access to medicine. Then what is a patient support program? Patient support program is one of the solutions that usually a pharmaceutical company offers directly or in collaboration with some independent third party like NGO for patients who just cannot afford the cost of the treatment they are prescribed. And it's usually run in a format of discount or providing patients with free goods or sample. For example, some pharmaceutical company may offer a discount program for the latest advanced treatment to the cancer patient. And also, some program may guarantee the patient to finish the entire course of treatment and therapy at a standard course, regardless of the duration of the treatment. And I believe all these options are very important to ensure access to the latest innovative medicine by the patient. Having said that, it's not a straightforward process overall, and there are few major challenges that always face the pharmaceutical company in the development of patient support program. And I will walk you through one by one. So the first challenge is always patient's eligibility. For patients who are interested in applying the PSP program, how can we be sure that the prescription is on label? And in some cases, many companies will offer scheme like every purchase of a predefined quantity, the patient will get a certain amount free goods as part of the support. And in this case, then a verification of the purchasing record is needed. Secondly, how can we ensure a compliance with the local policy and regulatory environment? For example, it's important for us to protect the patient data privacy, and the database need also to be created to support any internal and external audit. And the third challenge will be around internal policy and code of conduct. For example, as what we work in the pharmaceutical industry, we are responsible to make sure that we report all the potential adverse events to the local authority, and that needs to be a system to allow us to do that whenever we decide for the PSCP program. And number 4 is about the delivery. For the PSP may involve the distribution of free goods to patients, but the distribution channel in the pharmaceutical industry is usually decided to ship the good or deliver the good from the company to the pharmacy store or institution hospital, and seldomly directly delivered to the patient. As such, how can we make sure the delivery system is effective enough and able to facilitate the transfer of the goods, sample, figures from the company to the patient, or can we do it through their doctor. And sometimes this could be very challenging, depends on which country that we are talking about. And last but not the least is the overall program sustainability. Because the PSP program usually require a very heavy support on the documentation by all different parties, including patient, doctors, or even the company. For example, we may need them to submit the prescription form, purchase the record, and in some cases, consensus form. And we have seen that most of the PSP program cannot be sustained because it's such a burdensome for all parties to make sure all the records are kept in the right place and submitted over and over to the system, especially for those who need a chronic treatment. And that is where we see that over time, maybe there is a significant challenge in sustainability, and only few patients are willing to be remained in this PSP program. So with that, we are looking for an integrated digital platform that can maximize the reach and efficiency of PSP, and it should be sustainable. And the platform should allow patients to enroll at the point when a particular drug is prescribed, provide all information that is relevant to patient to make any decision with regards to the PSP enrollment, and capture all key decision making by the patient. And the platform should also be easy and user-friendly, not only for patient, but for the physician and company, because it will serve also of a main sources of database to support any internal and external auditing purpose. The ultimate goal, of course, for the patient support program is to help improve patient access to the medicine, better adherence to therapy, and ultimately create positive impact on patients' clinical outcome via an easy and user-friendly technical application. Silver, if you can help me flip over to the next slide. So with that, I hope you just heard what I just elaborate about the PSP program and the challenge, as well as what Silver just mentioned, the challenge facing us about the financial solution. And we are looking for the proposal from you. Either you can focus just on challenge number 1, or challenge number 2, or both. And it's really subject to your own discretion based on your expertise and resources available to help us with this challenge. And with that, I hope I was able to explain to you the opportunity and challenge we have with the PSP program. If there are any further questions from the audience, I'm more than happy to address it during the Q&A. So thank you very much for your attention.
Great, thanks a lot, Silver and Chester. That was a very in-depth explanation of the challenge statements. I hope the attendees have a good understanding of what we're looking for now. And if not, please put in all the Q&A that you can in the Q&A section of the Zoom webinar. We will get to that later on during the Q&A session, as was mentioned earlier. Now, however, we want to move on to the selection criteria to give you a better understanding of what the competition and the judges will be looking for. So please welcome William Shue. He is the head of the Pfizer Digital Innovation Lab of Greater China and a core member of the Pfizer Digital Healthcare Hub here in the Emerging Markets Asia team. He started his career in drug R&D before moving into the healthcare and technology investment field. And for the last several years, he's been advising startups across Asia and Europe on a variety of strategic and operational issues, ranging from market entry to product design to business development and fundraising. So please give a warm welcome to William to go through the selection criteria.
Hello, everyone, and very pleased to be here to talk to all of you. And we have a very, very exciting crowd and initiative here. And here I would like to brief everyone about what we are actually looking for. And when it comes to judging this particular challenge, right? And we're very looking forward to your submissions. But you may all be wondering that, okay, and what are the boxes that we need to tick? And so this is a very important topic. It was probably the one of the most daunting areas of this particular webinar. So I'll keep it as short and sweet as possible. So on a very broad level, we are looking at mainly three things, right? A market and needs, value and impact, and feasibility and a deliverability. What do they actually mean? So markets and needs, does the opportunity present a significant unmet need in affordability and accessibility and in the local and the regional markets, right? So you will have to show us your understanding of the actual gap in the market, what kind of patient impact or business impact that you're looking for. And that is currently either unaddressed or poorly addressed by the current solution, by the incumbent, right? And you that you have to showcase to us that you know not only that you've done the research, but you're able to not only qualify but also quantify, and that you're understanding in it, to use different kind of KPIs and to illustrate that. And you might ask, okay, there's so much information out there, or there's so little, how can I actually come up with a realistic answer? And that is exactly what we're looking for. When you can't find exact figure of the size of the opportunity, that you will have to show us that what is your underlying logic leading to your analysis, right? And so step by step, show your steps, and then we can evaluate whether your guesstimates are realistic. When it comes to value and impact, so what we're looking for is that is the proposed solution, is your idea and new enough, innovative enough, with very strong and impactful value propositions, right? So, we use this word innovative and like a little bit too frequently, and like in my view. What does that mean? Does that mean that we're looking for something that is entirely out of this world and disruptive? If you believe that you can come up with an idea that is also practical, by all means do so. But also at the same time, we're looking for solutions and ideas that are transformative, right? And that's additive to what the current situation, what the current solutions cannot offer. So like moving on to feasibility and the deliverability. So we are not looking for, and we're not looking to ask you to develop skills for drag slaying, right? If we can't commercialize, if we can't scale this idea in a commercially viable and way, and this will all be academic. So, and is the proposal deliverable realistically? And can it be developed into a commercially viable product with finite time and resources, right? That can encompass a whole variety of different things. Here is just some of the key points that we've highlighted on our website and as the selection criteria, right? So experience in financial and or healthcare ecosystem. So that is basically, and the research that you've done, the work that you have done, and the different kind of project research that you've carried out previously, and what kind of what kind of resources you can leverage in order to demonstrate that your understanding and your skill set in this sort of space. The capability and of you guys, of the team, right? So, and we all say that market is one thing, technology is another, but the team, the human capital that's going to be in place to make the whole thing happen is, and if one of the three sides of the pyramid. So we would like to understand a lot better about your overall capability, about the team setup, the team stability, the track record, so that we'll understand that, okay, these are a whole group of people that can deliver on this very exciting initiative that you're proposing. So scalability and ease of pilot implementation. Well, these two things and that you may argue that they are part of the same puzzle. So, and exactly like what I said earlier, right? So we want to make sure that even though this idea starts from from its infancy in a dry lab environment in the pipeline, we want to make sure that that is going to be scalable. The idea is going to be defensible. And when we get to the stage of building a pilot, building a minimally viable product, we want to make sure that that can be done with limited resources. And extent to which the solution could advance to a partnership with the organizer. So, and I mean, part of this, I mean, one of the key unique selling point, the beauty of an HFA is that we have, we have this network of very capable partners that we can, the amount of resources and the amount of expertise that we can leverage to help you, to support you in developing and growing your ideas into a tangible product later on. Can it actually, it is something that we can work with you in order to push the solution onto the next level. Right, cost effectiveness. If you come to us and say that, guys, we can save the world, we can completely change the world, we welcome that. But also at the same time, we want to make sure that we are not looking at an idea that will cost billions and billions and billions of dollars, and the next 100 years to solve. That will be too late. So demonstrate to us that you are financially conscious, that you at least have a plan, right? A realistic plan on the economic level, that your development pathway can reflect that. Moving on to time to market and market risk. So there are certain factors, and both internal as well as external, that are beyond our control. So we appreciate that, but we want to make sure that you have thought about what are the internal obstacles that you foresee that may impact your development timeline, right? And also, what are the external factors, or what are the kind of shall I say, the macroeconomic factors that's related to the economy, and the whole sector, the regulatory environment, things as such that may actually affect your delivery timeline. Very interestingly. Pardon me, we also want to make sure that you've thought about you don't have to show us the every step of the way, but at least on a very high level, you have thought about the different stages of the development and how much you reckoned and it will cost you to develop onto a certain level, to hit this kind of a milestone along the way. And as you know, that one of the key benefits, the final price, the final winning is 50,000 American dollars, and that you will get if you win this whole competition, right? But you have to demonstrate to us that how you're going to go about and spend this 50,000. So we want to make sure that not only that you understand the market, not only that you're designing a product, that you're thinking about designing a product that is fit for purpose, that you have the capability to do it, and also you've thought about and all the bits and bobs and about the process and about all the factors, all the different kind of puzzles that will come together to make a business, not just a product, a technology, right? So finally, upon popular request, and the people ask us that, okay, what exactly are you looking for, and what are the what are the best practices when it comes to submitting our proposal, when it comes to delivering and our presentation? Well, there is no cookie cutter formula. And also we want you to express your creativity as you go. However, and as much as I hate to like overuse some of those like strategy consulting framework, and which are probably overused, but in this instance it may actually work well, right? We're looking at a kind of we call it a STAR model, but bear in mind that that is just a suggestion. It's not it's not a guideline, it's not a requirement. So in the actual presentation that you can submit up to 10 pages, 10 slides. So start from situation, right? So what is your understanding about the whole scenario, and then moving on to the tasks at hand and your understanding about the pain points and what are the value proposition that you are proposing. Action, aka your idea, your technology, your solution that you are proposing, and then how you're going to go about of transforming something that is at a very early stage and into something a lot more material, a lot more and a lot more substantial. And the result, what are the actual impact do you think that ultimately that your technology, that your idea is going to deliver? Okay, and I'm going to stop here now. And if you guys have any further questions, by all means, ask away, and also pin us an email, and I'll pass it on back to Shubrat to move on to the next section. Thank you.
Great. Thank you so much, William. That was really helpful. So next up, we're going to pass this on to Valerie, who's going to answer actually one of the questions that was posed about use cases. So she's going to go through a few use cases where she's seen fintech bridge the gap with healthcare, and give you some examples of what to work towards and what to expect. Please, Valerie.
Great, thank you, Shubrat. So this second part, which will be a little bit shorter, will give you a little bit more of an idea of some use cases where fintech has come in to address healthcare affordability challenges. As I mentioned in the Q&A section, two of these are in Asia, and one of them is in Africa. We chose to showcase some of them. Again, we have a pretty wide knowledge base around fintech for health at Access Health because we have chosen to make sure that we look at these programs that some of them are quite often the gold standard for fintech for health. And what, can you still hear me? Okay, and what were the features that made those programs successful? I am going to run through these. The slides are kind of in an infographic form, but I wanted to let everybody know that you can send us, myself or my team, an email if you have any other questions as far as these cases. But these are just to give you a brief overview of projects that have happened around the world that have addressed healthcare affordability challenges. So one of the solutions that we've looked into is in the area of innovative financing is lending and microfinancing. So an organization that has done quite well in this area that we've managed also to establish a good relationship with is Roguia Finance. So Roguia Finance is a point of care digital health lending model that takes place in India. So it's this is a little bit about how it works. Give me 1 second, let me fix something over here. Okay, so Roguia Finance has figured out how to offer point of care lending using a financing model. It's a social healthcare venture which offers medical loans to traditionally unbankable, using unbankable population. That means those who do not have a formal banking account, so have no way to save, and often they're method of paying for their healthcare is in the form of cash. So they've figured out how to offer medical loans to traditionally unbankable using an innovative risk assessment tool that allows them to finance people outside of the formal banking system. One of the most important features of Roguia Finance is that they offer a very fast loan. The loan is given within 3 to 72 hours, and it's paid through a let's go through their offerings first. They have 2 product offerings: emergency digital healthcare loans, as well as pre-approved lending cards. So the way this works is that the patient is diagnosed. Let's use an example, perhaps let's use our cancer example. The patient's diagnosed, but they're unable to afford treatment, perhaps that first either chemotherapy or radiation treatment. The patient diagnosed with critical illness, they're unable to pay for the treatment, so the physician refers the patient to Roguia Finance, to the online platform, or an offline agent. Roguia Finance has done very well and has found it necessary to create trusted, lasting partnerships with lots of different medical institutions in the area, and this is one way that this relationship works, so that the physician can refer the patient directly to an Roguia agent to discuss their options. The second step is the referral, and then the patient reaches that Roguia Finance agent. They undertake rapid screening using a psychometric testing tool, which again, we can, if you have any questions about how this works, feel free to contact us. And it administers a psychometric test to determine their credit worthiness and risk-taking profile, which is how they're able to offer this loan at point of care in between 3 to 72 hours, 3 to 48 hours. If approved, if the patient is approved the loan, they can start the treatment right away. They haven't even left that health system at this point. And then Roguia immediately pays the hospital directly. And then finally, the borrower pays back Roguia in manageable installments. So what this addresses is the sudden cost of the diagnosis, as well as the high out-of-pocket costs that are required at upfront, which often those in the low to middle income groups cannot afford. So the lending cards, that's the first solution. The lending cards, first the patient comes in, they are pre-screened for whatever loan amount that they need. They negotiate the terms. The borrower is in need of a health loan. Roguia will check out that there is no material change in the financial outlook of the borrower at the time. They'll conduct means testing and pre-approve the loan terms, and then upon approval, the hospital or health provider receives the guarantee of payment, and customers can pay that back in manageable installments as well. So this model has been quite successful for Roguia in India. And again, if you can remember back to some of the health financing challenges that were presented in the beginning, it addresses a number of those challenges, but then also doesn't put the patient at high risk of not being able to pay back a loan, because the terms under which they negotiate allows them to pay back in these manageable installments. So this is quite a good use case to focus on. The second one I want to go through is MTBA, and perhaps you've heard of them. This is pretty much the gold standard as far as fintech for health, and a lot of different factors went into making this a successful program. Which again is a larger conversation, but please feel free to look it up yourself or contact one of us. But again, this gives a fantastic idea of not just the mechanisms and the tech needed for this kind of solution, but also the partnerships that come and play an important role in making something like this successful. So this is a bundled telco offering. And TIBA is a general health savings account model for Safaricom users. Initially, this was the collaboration of multiple organizations together, and it started small, and it addressed a small area of the problem, and then because there was more buy-in over the years, they were able to expand their product to offer a more bundled solution, which we know in the healthcare field that a more holistic offering is often better than a single targeted solution. This is a general health savings model in Kenya, Nigeria, and Tanzania, started in Kenya. MTIBA is a health payment platform which facilitates healthcare payments between funders, patients, and healthcare providers, directs the funds from public and private funders directly to patients into a health wallet on their mobile phone that can be used to pay for health services in the MTIBA approved clinics and for public and private insurance premiums. Another interesting feature of this model is that family can also contribute to the costs of a person's healthcare bills, because one of the interesting things about that this model chose to take into consideration was that family support and that charity that's available in these markets. So it's a very interesting cultural perspective on this type of solution. Another feature of success is that it was built to 4.3 million users, which then lessens your risk pool and just creates a much more successful program. And there are over 2,900 healthcare partners that are a part of this. So just briefly, how it works is that a Safaricom user signs up for an MTIBA account. The users can also register family and friends, and in this way they can be in the account and they can contribute money towards that patient's healthcare bill. The MTIBA subscriber can save, send, and receive funds for medical treatment through their phone. Family and friends can also send funds to loved ones exclusively for healthcare expenditures, and donors can send subsidies or vouchers to beneficiaries. The subscriber can pay for medical treatment at any MTIBA approved healthcare provider, which there are many, and they can use their phones to do this. And the subscriber can use funds to pay premiums for registered health insurance policies. So this program has grown, and as it's grown, it's been quite successful. And again, the partnerships, the mechanism, the considerations for patient health behaviors and cultural needs and willingness to pay for their healthcare are considered in this model. So the last model I want to go over, many of you may have heard about it, or perhaps have seen it recently. It's quite a simple model. It's a very new model. So you and I can both look at it together, but it's a very interesting one to highlight as it's close to home for all of us, or for a lot of us. So this is a telehealth offering, which we know during this period of COVID has been able to bring healthcare closer to the patient. During pandemics, this is important to minimize contact, but also to provide a sense of safety for that person to be able to ask about symptoms they may be having without having to also put themselves at higher risk. And we learn things about telehealth, things that are successful as well as things that are unsuccessful. Our take on telehealth at Access Health is that it's quite good. We like to see it bundled with other features as well. This model intends to do that. So OCBC Bank has started HealthPass in collaboration with 7 medical groups, and it's done through the mobile app. Provides telehealth services for more than 100 GPs and specialist doctors to address healthcare needs of all Singaporean residents over the age of 18, and this includes non-OCBC customers. So they pay a flat consultation fee, which is quite important. It usually it hovers around $15. And then there are 100+ wellness merchant offers as well. So there's a bit of that value add there. So the rates, patients pay a flat fee $70 for the first telehealth consultation or an in-clinic visit with a GP if they choose. And then the subsequent consultation fees are around $15. Medication and diagnostic procedures are charged based on current practices. So if anything else is needed, often that patient is referred somewhere. The users of the application, they have the ability to book and have video consultations with both GPs and specialists through the app. They have access to doctors that can refer them to specialists seamlessly through the app, so it addresses a lot of the pain points along the referral pathway that we often see. It securely receives digital medical certificates, clinical invoices, and laboratory results through the app. So it streamlines a lot of the logistics of a visit or a series of visits. And it allows for fully digitized medical record keeping, which we all know is important as far as consistency in medical records. It also has a feature that medication can be dropped at the doorstep for delivery. Based off medical consult or medication refill, there's that option as well. And you can access the wellness products and the services at preferential rates. So this is another model that that is included in the in fintech solutions. There are other models that have also been successful, and they use other forms of fintech solutions to address affordability challenges. These are three that we chose to highlight, but again, please feel free to message us, send us an email, ask us about FinTech for Health, about how the projects are going in all the markets, about what they look like, and then anything else under knowledge sharing. Access Health is happy to talk about. This QR code is our website, our FinTech for Health website, and this is our team at Access Health that we're quite happy to work with FTI on this and be a part of HFA. So thank you.
Great, thank you so much, Valerie, for going through that. So next up, we're going to go into the burning questions that you all have about the competition, challenge statements, and any clarifications about the selection criteria. So far we see there's about 6 questions already there. So please, if you have more questions, put it into the Q&A and we will address it as we go along here. So to first start off, we'll open it up to all the panelists. The first question I'm seeing is, for innovative financing ideas, what kind of consumer are we looking for? Since most low-income consumers would fall into the NGO/government help sector, and then there are those who would bear the burden of the cost and would pay out of pocket. So I suppose the question is asking, what kind of consumer are you looking for? It seems like more of a middle ground.
Okay, so I'm happy to start, and Chester, feel free to jump in. I think this is a good question, right? So for any solution, we need to think about where the right target is. For this particular innovative financing solution, I think for the emerging Asia markets where we're thinking about, it would be more on the middle income, upper middle income. As the question laid out there, it's not for the bottom of the pyramid, income pyramid. Those will be covered by government programs, NGO programs, and these what we are trying to solve for is people either they don't have the money today or they don't have the money now, but they have some ability to pay for some. Either they can pay in future or they can pay a part now because they pay the other part later. So these are more the middle of the income. They need to have some ability to pay. That is why it is important that you have some kind of tool to screen the consumers into and place them in a, so to speak, into the pyramid and see where the cutoff is, and then where you can take risk in giving those financial resources to those consumers and have a reasonable expectation they will pay you back, and hence I think we a couple of speakers talk about sustainability, right? So that the program is sustainable. So hopefully that my response, and Chester, feel free to jump.
Yeah, maybe just one additional point. I think what Silver mentioned is very true. I think essentially we are targeting more the patient group who are in the like middle class, because I think like Valerie has also mentioned a couple of times, right? A lot of the diagnosed when the patient is aware of their own disease situation, that always require a sudden and significant upfront cost. And a lot of population in Asia, maybe they might have their very consistent standard monthly income, but that income might be just not sufficient to cover a certain cost. For example, like cancer therapy, right? The initial payment. And also, in addition to that, because I'm mainly working on more inflammatory and immunology area, so we have also seen that when patients cannot tolerate any of their symptoms, maybe they would just go out and commit maybe the purchase of only few months of the therapy. But then what we are seeing is a lot of patients got dropped off from the medicine because they are just not able to afford that long-term therapeutic course. So I think that might be the pain point that we are seeing with the patient.
Great, thank you. And I think Edric, did you want to chime in on this as well?
No, thanks, Subrat. I think the speakers have answered very well. Thank you.
Okay, perfect. So the next question we had was for a proposed solution, does it need to be focused on one market, or can it be applicable for the entire region, or is there a specific specific thing that you guys are looking for, whether it's supposed to be local market or regional?
Okay, I'll start again. So I think ideally we would like to see a solution that can cut through the borders of the countries. So ideally a regional or even a global solution, if the solution could be scaled to other markets or other regions, even Latin America, Africa, Middle East, and my counterparts or the Pfizer colleagues are all interested in solving the same challenge in a lot of regions. So if your idea or your solution could be solving the problem in multiple markets, that's ideal. But we do also understand there might be local dynamics which might restrict your solution to be only applicable to one or a few markets that has a similar regulatory environment. So we are open to both, although let's say our preference will be, let's put it this way, if your solution can be applied in multiple markets, you probably get a higher score in the judge's evaluation. But we welcome even a single market solution could be, you could enter it with a single market.
Great. So maybe there's another question that actually loops into what you just mentioned. You gave us some indications about the regulatory requirements in specific markets. So how do we apply that to a product that may tackle fundamental problems in healthcare? How closely do we need to focus on the regulatory requirements?
So maybe Shippa, I can give some initial comment, and then we'll see if other speaker may have additional points. So I guess first, right, when we're talking about the regulatory requirement, because we are, as a pharmaceutical company, we are working and operating in a highly regulated environment, right? So just give an example of like when patients are interested in applying any patient support program, and is really ultimately important to demonstrate the patient eligibility, right? Because at the end, all this prescription, right, given by a specific doctor to the patient, the patient has to show, right, their identity. They are the one who get diagnosed, right, not their friends or their relatives. So I think in terms of the regulatory requirement is how we can also follow through along the patient journey. Like initially, when the prescription is given, I think we need to show that the prescription is specifically for that particular patient, right? And also, right, how can we make sure that the label is also like as part of the approved indication in that country? Because I think for most of our medication, not necessarily we get consistent label across the board. So how can we make sure, because in principle, right, that the off-label prescription is not encouraged. And then along that journey, right, and the patient, if they are taking the drugs, may have some adverse event. And how can we make sure that we capture those information? Because that is the requirement from the local regulatory, that we need to report back, both internal and external, that like whatever like report that we gather, we have the responsibility to report back to the local regulatory agent. And in addition to that, one point I want to make, because for the entire design of the PAP program, and we also need to go through some internal and external compliance clearance to make sure that whatever we do is really aligned with the local requirement. So these are all just some examples that I like to give, because just because like we are operating in a highly regulatory environment. So for each of the steps that we offer to patient, and we all know that the medicine most of the time might be a communication between the company and the doctor, right? And also important, we should not be seen as a directly like communication to patient in some cases. How can we draw the line and make sure that we are fully compliant? So these are maybe a few examples. I'm not sure if I answered the question, but welcome for any additional comment from the panel.
Sure.
Just want to maybe just add to the last point about avoiding the appearance of DTC, what do we call direct to consumer. As many markets, with the few exceptions, I think it's only probably Hong Kong partially, most emerging Asia markets, the regulation is such that we as pharmaceutical companies cannot sell, even appear to be selling directly to the patients, to consumers. And they need, that is which drug to use is really a decision between the patient and their doctor. So we don't, whatever we do, we cannot give people the appearance that Pfizer or a pharma company is trying to promote the drug directly to a unknowing patient, right? So that is why our challenge here, if you remember the first slide, the patient journey, is all targeting the patients who have already gotten a prescription from their doctor. Our intervention is after that interaction.
Great, thank you so much. And I guess last follow-up to this line of inquiry, where can you get more information about patient support programs and regulatory requirements in the healthcare industries? And is there any other nuances that we should be aware of when we're trying to formulate ideas?
Yeah, so that is an important question. I guess Valerie just showed us some example that might be that could be a source, right, for understanding more about the design and of the patient support program available. And I believe in some cases, in some of our official company website may also capture the program, as long as the local regulatory allow us to do that. And I think, right, if anyone is really interested, we can also share with you maybe some example, right, high level example that we have within our company.
There are also sometimes there are media coverage of certain company announcing a certain patient assistance program. Unfortunately, there is not a sort of one-stop shop that you can get all the information. So like Chester said, if you have a specific question, you are not too sure whether this is in compliance or under the proper regulatory rule or not, you can always ask one of the panelists, or you can direct to either Access Health, or you can direct it to us at Pfizer. And in the pitching, I guess if you made it to the final few rounds in the pitching, we can also address some of those.
Great, thank you. So now switching gears, now we need our selection specialist, William, to answer a few questions about how the selection process works. One of the questions is, considering this is a pitch competition and you don't have a significant amount of time to present, how fleshed out should these ideas be?
Well, first of all, thank you for your question, Max, and it's a good one, but it's almost an impossible one to answer, right? I would say that it depends on your solution, the solution that you're proposing, and how complex the issue that you're looking to tackle. But so that is the vague answer, right? And the more the more targeted, the clearer response from me, thinking from an entrepreneur's perspective, thinking from a pitcher's perspective, right? And if we only have 10 slides to pitch, then we wouldn't want to spend 5 of it all on describing the actual problems, right? We want to move on. We want to focus on the actual solution. So start with describing the problem, your understanding of it, qualifying it and quantifying it, and then what are the pain points that you're proposing to overcome, and then be sharp, be punchy, go straight into your solution, your thinking of the design around it, your plan of the development of the implementation, and also what kind of results, right, and that you think that you envisage that you can deliver. And so it really depends. So if your product, if your idea is still at a very early stage, say ideation stage, right, so it will be quite impossible for you to come and show us something concrete, but do let us know, and I mean, do show us your answer that you're thinking in the form of very high level blueprint, draw ups, diagrams, right, and your development roadmap, things as such, to demonstrate your logic, to demonstrate your thinking. And if you're in a more mature, more ready stage, say you've already got a proof of concept, or even better, you've already got a commercially viable product, then you can also include things such as the video clips, the product demos, and in the actual presentation, as well as that you can submit that onto our website, right, and for us to refer to. So don't worry too much about this. So so how fleshed out, it's really up to you. It's really up to you, but be sensible. So that will be my advice.
Great. And I know you mentioned this slightly in that answer there, but for businesses that are looking to participate in the challenge, do they need to be revenue generating already, or is proof of concept fine, or is it very early stage okay? What are you looking for?
And you absolutely do not need to be a revenue generating business. So the participants, the entrants of this particular challenge, they can range from individuals, like yet to be incorporated companies, and all the way through to what I would call it the Series B and funding stage startups, right? And so if you have a MVP, a minimally viable product, or if you already have launched your product, then that's fantastic. But if you haven't got that, if you're very early stage, that doesn't mean that you're going to be in a disadvantaged situation. So we will take them into consideration. It's really a matter of showcasing your idea and show us the practicality, the feasibility of making it into a solid product later on. So it's the journey that we're looking for, right? It's not so much about picking an existing over-the-counter product. So we're looking to kind of go on this journey with you to move on to the next level together, right?
Great. Thank you so much, William. So now a question for all of the panelists. What are the biggest roadblocks to solutions in the healthcare space that you've seen before, whether that's fintech bridging into healthcare or solutions within the healthcare space on its own?
I would offer just a real couple sentences on just an overview of what we've learned so far in terms of translating that kind of that value proposition between fintech and healthcare. We've learned that there's a sort of translation going on, and I've covered a couple different things in the presentation that that shows those kind of gaps in understanding each other. But there are many other things, and they vary from market to market, as well as the how advanced the fintech landscape is in each of the markets. So that also factors in a lot. In addition to healthcare either being, working well or working not well, the level of universal healthcare, there's a lot of different factors, but I'd say one challenge is really just finding out overall how the value proposition should be framed for fintech to come in, so that they not only can see what the financing challenges are, can see what their role could be, but also could see what the business benefits would be for them, because that's quite important to bring it all the way to them, or else you really just don't have much to start out with. And then on the healthcare side, went through the patient journey and the financing journey on top of it, but there's it can get quite messy as far as the pain points and the payment points for that patient. So it's often a matter of being able for healthcare to display where exactly those pain points are for them and their patients. So really, it's a lot of kind of untangling helping them untangle what their patients are experiencing, and again, putting it in a way that makes sense. And then finding that point of translation to fintech, and actually bringing them both to a point that they can understand each other and help each other. So
I would just share maybe one challenge I've encountered working with some fintech companies in the past would be, I think, is the issue of financial risk management. Given that a lot of fintech companies are startups and they are not that big, they don't have a lot of capital, they are capital hungry themselves. Sometimes they come up with a solution is purely a tool. Let's say we talk about the means test or income, placing people into different income. If you don't, I think I talked a little bit in my comments at the beginning, is if you don't have a validation and you're not tying your own capital to whatever tool you're proposing to do, it's very difficult to sell that solution as a piece of the entire solution. You only have a piece of the solution and not the whole solution. It's very difficult. If for me, it's like you give me a income testing tool, and then you say, I need Pfizer or someone else needs to take the full risk of it. And you want to be a service provider. I think today we have plenty of those service providers. We want someone who is more than able to just spill like a black box, if you will. Run 10 patients profile into this black box. Hey, these 2 patients is worth you doing something with them, whether you give them a free pack or whether you give them a loan or whatever you're going to do. But how do I know your answer is reliable, is credible? And that is a major challenge from my perspective. The second one I'd say is a lot of we mentioned the pharmaceutical company industry being highly regulated. Financing institutions are also highly regulated on the other hand. So a lot of companies, they start up in one market, they can't go to the other because they don't have the proper license, or maybe it's too costly for them to go to the second market before they fully establish themselves in the home market. That's another challenge.
Yeah, I would like to also weigh in on that. Thank you, Silva. I completely agree. And one thing that we would like to emphasize here, right, when we talk about innovation, when we talk about technology, solution, we aren't just talking about a piece of software or a piece of hardware. We're also talking about the process, right? And we're also talking about the actual model. So if you discover something that you think is a game changer, and whether that is a piece of technology in the sense of a software or a new way of doing things, and to do propose that to us. And one of these things that I've discovered that is often neglected, all right, and we all know this, but we we overlook these, is that technology, both technology and healthcare, are about people. So when you are considering which segments of the value chain, what part of the pain points in the entire sector that you're looking to tackle, think from a user perspective, as Valerie pointed out, right? And it's the user journey, it's the care pathway, and how you're going to go about and evaluating a human psychology, the behavioral side of things, and then how take that into consideration. It's not just that, okay, I've got a piece of technology and I can just slot somewhere and in, and so think of it from a more holistic perspective.
Great. I think that was a pretty, that I think hit all of the roadblocks. Chester, do you have any other roadblocks you have coming to mind at all, or?
So I fully agree what the panel has just said. So I guess maybe just like what I just mentioned, I think it's very important, right, to make sure that whatever solution that we provide here is sustainable and really drive the efficiency. Because I think we have done actually a lot, but again, right, we face so much challenge to sustain something like the solution for longer time. And keep in mind that many patients, for whatever disease they might be suffering, in most cases are chronic, right? They need to be on the therapy for a very long time. And how can we make sure that the solution and whatever plan and technology that we provide here and really value added to the patient, to the physician, really over a long period of time? That I would be thinking is very important.
Great. Thank you so much, all of the panelists, for answering that question. So I think that brings us to the end of the Q&A session. I believe Irfan is going to put up the QR code for the HFA LinkedIn group so that anybody who's interested can follow us on LinkedIn. And that's pretty much brings us to the end of our time for the webinar. Thanks for everyone who attended today, and of course all the panelists that have volunteered their time to assist with this webinar and the HFA Pitch Challenge in general. We look forward to seeing all of you at the pitch events in the coming months, and we hope to put together another webinar